up? So originally I was going to go for like an elaborate intro, right? But realizing that 3 minutes before the goods isn't going to cut it. So I'll make this one brief, cut to the chase. I'm going to switch to Linux real soon. Why? Well, over the years I've been maining Windows since the dawn. And the PCs I've used over the years were running on Windows OSs from XP, 10, 11, and Vista. Windows 11 is turning itself into like a bloated, unstable, invasive piece of trash. Simply put, it gets worse every update it makes. So, what do I do in this time of need? Well, it's simple. I built a new PC, running on the Penguin, of course. And luckily for me, I did bought the parts during December, before it gets, worse and all that. I'll talk about that later. But I also assembled it on New Year's. And this year's my project. Is it in focus? It's gonna be in full view, isn't it? So, as a Mace tradition, I gave these PCs nicknames. So for the old Omen pre-build I bought, I nicknamed that thing the Monolith, because, it's a big black thing. And for the other one, the one I'm using right now, the Monolith Mark II, that's also a nickname. But what do I name this one? Well, I thought about it for a while, but I considered naming this thing Tuxedo, but I decided to go for a funnier name. Tux Paint. In order to freely cut the Windows link, it's not as simple as snip like an internet browser. Windows is like the equivalent to that one scene from The Matrix, where Neo entered the real world, surrounded by pod people who represent Windows users, and the people of Zion represent Linux. Believe it or not, switching to Linux takes balls to commit. You have them, right? Like I said earlier, I've already got the parts in December, and prices of not only RAM but SSDs and GPUs went way up. Fortunately for me, only the RAM price spike was affected, whilst the rest of them were at a more reasonable price, until later in the month. So here are the parts I've gathered. An MSI Pro B650MA Wi-Fi motherboard, armed with a Ryzen 9700X CPU, an MSI Ventus 2X RTX 5060 Ti GPU, 64 gigs of Kingston DDR5 RAM, a Be Quiet Pure Power 1000 watt power unit, and 3 TB of SSD storage. For the fans, I bought some white Be Quiet Pure wings to match the case, and the main cooling unit is going to be air-centric like the previous build, so I grabbed a Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE for $60, and that was my Christmas present, by the way. Lastly, the very case to put everything in, the NZXT H5 Flow 2024 in white. Yeah, there's no RGB lighting on this thing, how sacrilege. However, I already took a closer look before building, and one thing I would add to the shopping cart is a PVC mesh filter for the added dust protection, along with some magnet tape to apply said filter to stick on the rig. Oh wait, do you need any peripherals? Like keyboard, mouse, speakers, monitors? No, maybe I can reuse the spare hardware I got. Also, since Linux is free and open source, the final tally, which I bet some people will be disgusted, is up to $3,040 Canadian, or $22.20 plus in Yankee money. Yeah, thank the AI tech shitheads and the corporates for making PC gaming even less affordable these days. Now, contradictory to the last paragraph, I bought me a new LG Ultra Gear monitor that costed me $200, and this 27-inch thing is 1440p running at 200Hz. Now, there are cheaper monitors, 1080p ones, for less than $100 that has a decent picture quality and 120Hz if you're willing to dive in. Now anyways, mine had a weird connection issue that I have to replace the DP cable, so at $20 for a new cable and that was the last piece, totaling $3,260 Canadian, or $23.76 USD. Now, even though I got my rig planned out, but before I plan on taking the metaphorical red pill, I needed to find my Morpheus. Before building the PC, what kind of distribution am I using? Well, for starters, I'm not doing Arch, that's Dark Souls Linux. I've discussed with a few people from different Discord servers, watched some videos, and even talked to some neckbeards from Reddit. I was suggested many distros like Mint, Pop! OS, Bazite, Ultramarine, Fedora KDE, OpenSUS, Debian, etc. 4chan's Tech Board, or G, suggests Fedora KDE, Debian, or Kubuntu. Now, from what I know, there are technically three main pillars of Linux distros: Debian/Ubuntu, Red Hat/Fedora, and Arch. Ubuntu is stable and user-friendly, but slow for the cutting-edge packages and updates. Arch is the opposite, where it can be unstable and felt like a hacker PC, but always up to date on the cutting-edge packages plus rolling updates. Fedora falls in between, and keep this in mind, I'm getting this kind of info from a friend who used Linux. Now, another thing to keep in mind, there is no perfect distro. It all depends on you and your preferences. Now, there's a site I would recommend known as DistroC, which lets you try out the many distros without downloading anything. I know, looks overwhelming. These distros often come in different GUIs, or GUIs as the penguins call them. Now, these can look like Windows, Windows XP, Mac, an Android tablet from 2011, or something very new. If you want my recommendation, get one that's popular and currently active, plus make sure it's not designed for servers or some shit. So, literally, the top 20 from DistroWatch. Do some research, test them yourself, and have fun. Now, I need a Linux distro that's not only beginner friendly, but also supports NVIDIA drivers. Now, there is Mint, but under Macean rules, I go for Zorin. Zorin OS 18 specifically. Not only Zorin has the looks of a modern Windows OS, but also had NVIDIA drivers right off the ISO. That then is very up to date as of December 2025. And so I have these thumb drives, one I can use for updating the BIOS, and the other for Zorin. You download Balena Etcher, flash the downloaded Zorin ISO to the thumb drive, and then get another thumb drive to put the BIOS update for that new motherboard. Now we get to the fun and stressful part, the building. Now, for those who build PCs for a living, this is like advanced Legos requiring a screwdriver. To me, probably a few steps behind surgery because of the expensive and sometimes fragile parts I had to put in. Carefully. I initially wrote down the process before I built the whole thing just because I was so overconfident. But during the process, I'm going to tell you how much I fucked up. Starting with the unboxing of the case where I accidentally left that shipping sticker. Though the uncensored footage is quite blurry, the postal code can be deciphered. Now, the first mistake while building, the fans. No, not what you think. The fan setup is fine. I know which side sucks in and blows out. But one thing I should have done was to install the top fans after I put in the motherboard and cooler in. I placed the 3 Be Quiet fans up front and one as the rear exhaust, while the 2 NCXT ones that came with the case are placed on top. I have the Thermalright hub placed in the back so I can attach the fans right in the sweet spot. The PSU I installed before the motherboard, which is kinda goofy in hindsight because I had to unscrew the whole thing just to take a certain cable off. The cable management here is fussy though, and these don't like to bend quite hard, so that's why I had to be a little more delicate. Not even the motherboard is safe from my fuckery. I installed the RAM sticks incorrectly because I've glossed over the manual and thought the sticks had to be inserted in the slots 1 and 3 spots, not the slot 2 and 4. Pulling them off is also a bitch because they're gripping on those slots tight. Also, why does it have to be in slots 2 and 4 first? Why not 1 and 2 like a reasonable man would do? It'd be a non-issue if I had 2 more sticks, but still. The next one is the CPU fans, and the crucial mistake on my end is that I installed the whole cooler before I plugged in this Noctua splitter I have, which saved me a lot of trouble. This splitter connects both the CPU fans and the hub. And after that trouble, I prefit the motherboard and take off those weird hub posts and move them to the slots in the motherboard so I can screw them in. The I/O shield I plaster in nice and tight, and the last kind of fuck up is putting in the GPU, but this time only minor because of those rubber plug covers are in the way. Next, roast my cable setup. Once I plugged everything into the Mobo, flicked the switch and boot up for the first time, I saw nothing. And this is before I fixed the RAM issue. But there's another light for the CPU, so I refitted the processor, added an extra smidge of paste, reinstalled the cooler, and plugged in that BIOS USB to install the update, so it can recognize the CPU, which is mandatory. Finally, plug in the distro USB, test out the OS, and begin enlightenment. Alright, you wanna know something? I've been told not to use Nvidia hardware for Linux because it's tedious and fussy and shit. The reason why I chose Zorin is because of the drivers alone. The only hurdle when reading the steps is to go to the BIOS and disable the secure boot for the drivers to install correctly. Problem is when I did just that, it says that the quote Ubuntu Live CD installer failed to start, and I was like, the fuck? So I checked the hashes and the ISO should work correctly. However, I read the online instructions carefully and I could install Zorin normally without the drivers, which I had to manually install after the OS is in. Wanna know the fun part? I could connect to the internet with no hassle, unlike the Mint one years ago. Once that's done, I not only put it in the 2TB SSD, but I gotta redo the cables just to make it look nice. Now there are some nice setups with distinct wiring on the internet, but one thing I know for law is that you can't mix and match the PSU cables from other brands, or else it's bad news for both the PSU and motherboard. Nothing but some zip ties and Corsair Velcro won't hurt. So the post-PC build, I added some extra bits and pieces. For one, I did install the mesh filter, and I begin to realize that this is a tad too dense for my liking, so I cut out some extra holes. Well, by that I meant carve out the rabbit logo along some thick vent lines underneath for the sake of airflow or something. Second is that I installed a spare 120mm Noctool fan, and this is the end result of that. Yeah, the fucker's noisy, so I removed that and bought one more Be Quiet fan in its place. Another thing for convenience is one of those cable sleeves, but not only for the Tux but also my main monolith, along with a brand new surge protector because why not? James Rolfe is right about those big ass brick plugs that hog the space. Why do we even need these? Also, one more thing to throw in. Perfect. Linux has a nice variety of applications, but keep this in mind that some of the ones I had on Windows are not compatible. HitFilm for one isn't compatible, and don't suggest me DaVinci Resolve, that never worked for me. As in, I never got used to their environment. Also, I'm not going to use GIMP either, that workflow is atrocious. However, there are a variety of programs I could use on a daily basis, and plenty do run natively on Linux, some built in. Examples being LibreOffice, OBS, Inkscape, Blender, Brave Browser, which is built in, Audacity and Reaper, though I keep Reaper on my Windows PC, I pay for that, VLC for videos, and the greatest program of all and the reason why I named this project after it, Tux Paint. Now the following apps shown are going to be the alternatives since they're not supported through Linux unless I use Wine, which is the compatibility layer to run Windows apps, though not perfect. So for the main R software I started using Krita, but formerly I used Clip Studio Paint. For textures and shitposting I would still use Krita, but I could use Photoshop through Wine. For image browsing software there was OpenView for Windows, but surprisingly it's not compatible to Linux, so I had to use QuickViewer. For video editing software, well, I haven't made my choice yet. For built-in text editors, well, yeah, anything will do. Music players? Well, on Windows, it's Winamp. that whips the llama's ass. But for Linux, I would use the equivalent, QAMP, which does support Winamp skins, which is cool. For screenshots, there actually is a built-in screenshot thing for Zorin, so I'm going to be using that. And for the bulk image and video conversion software, I use Niche's, Pixelian, and Prism. That's on the Windows side. For Linux, I'm going to be using Conversine and Ciano respectively. On the Windows side, for MP3 tagging software, I use, well, MP3 Tag. But for Linux, I'll be using MusicBrainz Picard. And lastly, CD ripping software. Well, I use ExpressRip CD for Windows. On Linux, it's Sunder. Only 5 programs on the Windows side are paid, which ranges from $20 to $50, except my pirated copy of Photoshop CS6, because fuck paying $700 for base form, or a shady subscription service where it has a cancellation fee. The Penguin side, however, is all free. Yeah, it's kinda wild that I didn't exactly make this for gaming, even though it is built for one. Hell, it could run Borderlands 4 better than the Monolith 2, likely much better without the Windows bullshit. Now, each of these apps will have its own challenges I'll face, mostly the paint programs because that's the focus of it all. I know in recent news that there is a way to install the later versions of Photoshop through Wine that requires an elaborate setup, plus a copy of Photoshop CC 2021, but it ain't perfect. Besides, I think Creature will be my main shitpost program. And so after some intense building, the stress of getting the Penguin operating system running on the new computer, and some all fuckery, this is where my journey begins. However, I still got some videos to finish off. Ultra Kill Part 3 isn't going to make itself, especially when that new fraud update is already out by the time this video is uploaded. So once the videos are done and some Lost Legends scripts are updated, I'm going to have some fun with this thing. Embrace the penguins, lads. Windows ain't gonna grip on you forever. You want ownership? You want full control of your computer? You want to break free of the system? Cool. But first off, delete your Twitter account because doom scrolling is going to affect your mental. And second, use virtual machines like that fat Indian guy from Toronto keep telling y'all for the past several years. I mean, break that crab mentality, because freedom is one click away. And some hardware, and some money for parts. And don't tell me you're broke, because McDonald's is always hiring. And after that, I'll see you later. Bye. Yeah.